Here's why being a good boy can ruin your life. So there's this idea that Jordan Peterson talks about, who's this famous professor and psychologist. He talks about this idea of order and chaos. So there's people who represent pure chaos, and these are the people who always break the rules. So think about the person back in school who was unpredictable, rebellious, constantly challenges the teacher, talks back. And that's the type of person that, represents pure chaos. But at the other end of the spectrum, there's a guy that never breaks the rules, like the good boy, the guy that listens to authority, never questions anything, and is just very reliable, does whatever the teacher says, like the teacher's pet. And these are both opposite sides of the spectrum. And I used to be like the good boy, the guy that never challenges authority, the guy just sat, patiently in class, listening to the teacher, never challenging anything, just blindly obeying anything that was told to me. And I thought that was good. For the longest time, I thought maybe that's just the way you have to survive in society. You just got to keep doing that until you eventually, you grow older and eventually you become the authority figure. But I realized that this isn't an issue with time. It's an issue with my mindset. And I thought this was positive. But Jordan Peterson talks about both of these cases, the guy that is rebellious, pure chaos, and the guy that never breaks the rules, pure order. Both of these extremes are bad. And the reason is because when you have too much chaos, let's say the guy that always rebels, that's fairly easy to imagine, right? You just end up with destruction, instability everywhere if everyone's breaking the rules. So that's fairly easy to conceptualize. But I never got the fact that if you have too much order, that's actually a bad thing as well. When you're too much of a good boy, what happens is this actually results in tyranny, stagnation, lack of progress, because you're not challenging what people tell you. You just agree with whatever someone tells you. And if that's a dangerous ideal, if you believe something negative that's genuinely destructive without challenging it, that's how you lead to that's what leads to tyranny. That's what leads to just very just tragic outcomes and wars and just genocides and things like that. And so Jordan Peterson mentions the best approach is actually balance, which is where you follow the basic rules. I'm not saying to break every single rule in society, but follow the rules that are meaningful, but break the outdated, unjust ones. And I only did this only very recently. So only I'm trying to break out of this mindset because I realized it's just not it's not helpful for me, for my growth. It's not helpful for my outlook towards life, because when I just follow the rules and just do what everyone says, I end up living their lives rather than trying to live my own. And so I end up feeling super trapped because now I'm trying to live life according to other people's expectations as opposed to my own. And so the turning point for me was actually one day I was just at my home and I got a knock on the door. And, I thought it was a delivery driver or whatever. But when I opened it, it was a construction worker. It was a delivery, construction worker. And he was like, "Hey man, your car in the front is kind of blocking my truck from entering. Do you mind moving it?" And I looked at it and he was like, "Okay, how much do I need to move it?" He was like, "Oh, just maybe move it 1 meter forward." And you might think that's a super easy thing for me to do. Okay, go move the car 1 meter forward, do as the guy says, that's it. But the issue was, I was only a learner driver at that stage, which means I cannot drive legally the car if there's no one besides me watching me. So I need a parent or someone with a full driver's license to be there by my side, to actually, look at me to make sure I don't do anything stupid when I'm driving. And so my parents were home. And so there was no adult. I didn't want to ask the construction worker. That just felt awkward. And so I was left with the decision of, do I break the rules of driving illegally since I don't have a supervisor next to me? Or do I just tell the construction worker, I can't do that. I don't have my license or something. And that day, something just clicked inside of me. I was like, you know what? I can't be a bitch anymore. You know what? I'm just going to do it. And so I went in the car. I was technically illegally driving because I didn't have my full license with no supervisor. But I did it. I drove 1 meter. Yes. And you might be thinking about that story like, it's just 1 meter, like that's nothing. But the reason I want to share this with you is even though the distance is not that long, it's 1 meter. For me, this like activity or this like, driving story represented a huge mindset shift for me. It showed me that like sometimes you don't always have to follow the rules. Again, like, I want to just, put a disclaimer before you report me to the police or something. There's general rules that are meaningful, that are important to follow, like don't steal, don't do things like that. But when it comes to like driving illegally, yes, don't drive without a license, but there's nuances. And in this case, if it's just driving 1 meter of my car, which is in front of my house, just to move it 1 meter so the construction worker could come, I personally don't think that's, a rule that's something that I have to follow. Okay, it sounds kind of bad, but I mean, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that. But it did represent a mindset shift in the sense that I'm more critical of the rules that I'm following now. And it's not like, I'm a rule breaker now or something, but it's more like I'm now living life according to my own critical judgment as opposed to the judgment of other people. So I think that's one of the most powerful things that I've learned this year, to not be too orderly, not be too chaotic, but be in the middle. And I hope that you can do the same as well. Enjoy.